Okay. I am live now.
It'll take about 15 to 20
All right.
minutes.
Okay.
Once the pressure
Do you want to talk or anything?
Well, is he part of the...
Yes, he is. He's paying for it.
Okay.
Yeah.
So we'll wait for him to...
Okay, you're not gonna have hot water?
Okay.
So, well,
Okay, then the valve, you close the wrong valve.
Sarah?
You got one of those valves.
She was a tour guide, right? Okay. Are you okay to be
Yeah.
videoed?
Yeah, I'm just kind of wondering what this is for.
Yes, but that-
Oh, it's just part of my YouTube. I go and explore haunted places and stuff.
Okay.
Yeah, I have my own exploration like YouTube channel.
Okay.
Yeah, so I'm trying to get enough subscribers to where we can go and do more places and everything.
Gotcha.
Yeah.
Did you sign it?
I did not. Okay. What is today's date?
The first. That's up to you if you're comfortable with that. Huh? That's up to you if you're comfortable with that. I'm fine. Kind of going, should I get my name tag? What would you do? I think just...
Do we put our city and state? Okay. Midland, Texas. All right. Google. Cool. I put both of our names down.
Perfect. Are you wanting to know about the haunted history of this place as well as the regular history?
That would be pretty cool.
Okay.
Have y'all like experienced anything being here?
Something has happened in every single room.
Okay. That's pretty cool. I play with the Ouija board a little bit, and I believe in all that. I don't believe that only demons can haunt it. It's also ghosts. There's a ghost that follows me. His name's Zozo. And so he's like around when I'm around. So it's pretty cool. And he has a crush on me. So he's more of like a protector, you know, to me. So yeah, it's pretty cool.
Sort of like a guardian angel.
Yeah, he's actually on a business call right now.
Gotcha.
Yeah,
Okay.
we just came down here because he has to sell a tool or whatever that
Okay.
he invented for the oil field. We're actually from Midland, Odessa area, Texas, West Texas area. I don't know if y'all know where that's at.
I do know where that is, yes.
Yeah, so it's like oil field country right there.
Okay.
And high school football country.
Yeah.
Friday Night Lights.
Right? My mom actually went to Permian.
Oh,
Did mom graduate when they made Friday Night Lights?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, she went to school with a lot of those guys that were portrayed in the movie.
Okay, let me just double check, because I was waiting for you to sign it, but I think it processed without your signature. Let me just double check while you guys do your form.
Okay.
Sorry. I'll let you start, Sarah, and if it didn't, I'll get it again.
Okay. So my name's Sarah. I'll be with you as we go throughout the Clayton house. Just a couple of quick things. Please no eating, smoking, or gum chewing while we're in the house itself.
Okay.
You are welcome to take photos or record video, but please no flash. Light just destroys everything.
Okay.
And then we do have some pieces of furniture that are safe to sit on. So if it has ribbon, like this here, or if it's tucked up underneath a table or just kind of in general hard to get to, please don't sit. And that's both for your safety and for the safety of the item.
Right.
Because we do have some pieces that I wouldn't trust to hold the weight of a kindergartner.
Okay.
So what we're going to do is we're going to go over a really brief introduction of the entire history of the house from the time it was first built until now. And then once we get done with that, we'll start moving from room to room and we'll talk about how the Claytons would have used this space in their day-to-day lives. And then kind of as we go throughout, I'll mention some of the more interesting things that have happened in the different rooms. So if you're ready.
Ready? You ready to hear? Okay, cool.
Okay, so the house we're standing in was first built in 1852 by a guy named William Sutton. And the part of the house that he built was basically this interior wall here, this way, upstairs and down. minus the bay windows and minus the original kitchen and servant quarters in the back corner, which is now a caterer's kitchen and gathering room. But so even though it was half the size of the current house, it was still a mansion for 1852, because if we take this green room, the parlor here, that is a little bit bigger than your average one-room log house. Not much bigger, but a little bit bigger than your average house. So hopefully that puts it into scale how big this house really is, or was, I should say. Now Sutton, along with owning the mansion, owned at least 2/3 of the block, if not the entire block. I've come across both numbers. And he did own 2 or 3 enslaved people. Now how he made his money is he was a merchant with a store on Garrison Avenue. And along with selling your everyday items, because we're here right on the Arkansas River, he was able to import items from New York and London and Paris. Now, I got those cities from an ad that he put in the paper, so grain of salt. But it is well within the realm of possibility because we're on the Arkansas, which basically connects everywhere. Along with that, he was also selling quite a bit to people who were traveling through Fort Smith to go west. So even by 1852, we are a very well-established town. So we're not that tiny little backwater that Western movies and novels like to say we are. I have lots of issues with those. We are a border town because Indian Territory, with its various Native American nations, basically, or tribes really, is quite literally right across the Oklahoma River, or the Arkansas River, the Oklahoma border, sorry. So we are a border. Now everything's going good for Sutton up until 1860, when his store, along with 10 or 11 others, burned down. And it's just the fact it was part of the supply chain for forts further west on the real frontier. So we were a pretty big spot. Basically, if you wanted to move an army out west, easily, you had to take Fort Smith. So by default, the fort was held by the U.S. or the Union Army. They were here first, but they couldn't hold it for very long, so pretty quickly they had to surrender it to the rebel or Confederate armies.
I'm sorry, I need to step out and catch this. Go ahead, she's the one that's really interested.
Yeah.
The reason I bring this up is because Sutton was a Confederate sympathizer. I quite firmly believed in that Confederate cause, and pick your pet cause. So while the Confederates held Fort Smith, for Sutton, it was all well and good, or as good as it can be while there's an active war going on. Come 1863, 1864, the rebels weren't able to hold the fort any longer, so they had to re-surrender it to the U.S. Army. This is not good for Sutton because since he is a rebel sympathizer, he can get his property taken.
Okay.
Since he's a wealthy rebel sympathizer, they're going to seize his property as an example to others.
Right.
So he knows this. So before the U.S. Army moves in, he closes up his house and he and his family leave for Texas. So after he's gone, the U.S. Army moves in. He is on that list of rebel sympathizers. So they confiscate the house and they start to use this as a Union hospital.
Okay.
Now, to give you an idea of the conditions of this house, keep in mind it's half the size. It was one of 8 buildings that got taken over to be used as the Union Hospital.
Okay.
And it was just called the General Hospital. And between the 8 buildings, in December of 1864, there were 273 men that were patients.
In this house?
Not in the house, in the hospital.
Okay.
I did the rough math, and it was about 50 men were patients in the house.
Okay.
But keep in mind, that's just patients. That's not doctors, that's not orderlies, that's not nurses, that's not nurses' aides.
Okay.
Most of what came through here was disease and illness.
Okay.
So can you just imagine the shape this house is in when the war ends and Sutton comes back?
It's torn down and
It's not torn down, but it is trashed.
yeah.
To give you an idea, they found his wife's rosewood piano on the banks of the Arkansas River, somewhere within a 2-mile radius.
Okay.
Now, war ends, Sutton comes back, he gets his house back, but keep in mind his store had burned down, his house is trashed, he has to start paying his labor, and pretty much all of his money is in Confederate dollar bills. which he did get a little bit back from that, but basically with his fortune he could use it to wallpaper his house, which people did, or he could use it to start a fire to keep warm. That's what its worth was after the war. Now, he didn't go into bankruptcy right away, but he did have to sell it in the mid-1870s. It went through a couple of different hands, and in early 1882, a guy named William Henry Harrison Clayton, this guy here, bought the home.
Okay.
Now, William Clayton and his wife Florence, and this is Florence, had moved to Fort Smith in 1874 because William had been appointed to be the prosecuting attorney at the Fort Smith Federal Court,
Okay.
which was held in one of the decommissioned barracks where the old fort used to be. So William came in with Isaac Parker, and he still holds the record for the most number of cases prosecuted in a career, and that's about 13,000 cases.
And how long?
14 years.
14 years.
Yes. In a 20-year time span, so under Isaac Parker, basically, there were anywhere between 13,000, which the Rangers now think is a pretty low number, and 20,000 cases went through the Fort Smith Federal Court system. Realistically, the Rangers think it's about 16,000 cases went through Fort Smith in 20 years, but we don't know because where all of the fires were held down in Dallas, where all of the files were held down in Dallas, there was a fire. So a lot of information was lost. So William was pretty busy, and when he wasn't the prosecuting attorney, he was a private lawyer. So the Claytons aren't your average family. Now, whenever William bought the home, he's the one who made it look like what you see now. So he added on the entire north wing, upstairs and down. He put in the bay windows over on this side. He put in the original kitchen and servant quarters in the back corner. He put in the staircase. He put in the front door. He brought the roof out to make the space under the roof a full third story instead of just storage space. It was still storage, but it's a third story storage. So basically, William took a mansion and built another one around it because he doubled the size of the house. Now, they finished construction later on in 1882, and that's when they moved in. And they lived here until 1897, which is when the federal court closes for a little bit. And when it reopens, the territory it covers is much smaller because it's been broken up into 4 pieces. One piece is still the Western District of Arkansas, and now there are 3 new court territories in Indian Territory, modern-day Oklahoma. And William is appointed to be the judge of the central jurisdiction out in Indian Territory. It's located out in McAllister. So the family moves out to McAllister, but they keep the house, and we don't know exactly when, but pretty quickly they turn this into a boarding home. So a boarding home is where, instead of being a single family home, now it's a multi-family home. So most of these rooms are now what we would call studio or efficiency apartments.
Okay.
So starting in the early 1900s, there are 4 families upstairs, and there are 3 or 4 down here. So that's 7 to 8 families living in this house. Now, the Claytons own the home until 1920, when William passes away at the age of 80, and they sell it to a woman named Emma High, who continues to run it as a boarding home up until 1968. So can you imagine how many people have lived in this house?
A lot.
And walked up and down these stairs, and were born in these rooms.
Wow. That's pretty cool.
We've had people come visit the site for special events and things, and notably, the one I recall was last spring. We had someone come through, and she was in what is now the drawing room, and was the drawing room when the Claytons were here. That was her first apartment after she got married.
Wow.
So that was her and her husband's first apartment, right there.
Wow.
So just think of how much history has happened in this house.
Yeah.
Now, by 1968, the house looked nothing like this. Paint was peeling, wood was rotten, spindles were gone, fretwork was gone, plaster was rotten. They basically it was a rundown tinderbox just waiting for something to happen. A condemned rundown tinderbox waiting for something to happen. And in 1968, Emma High was trying to fix it up to get it livable again, and she had some men working up on the roof, and hot tar and a cedar shake roof don't mix. So a fire started up on the roof, and between the fire damage and just the upkeep that needed to happen over the years that hadn't, she didn't have the funds to fix it up, so she tried to sell it, but who wants to buy a rundown tinderbox with fire damage in a poor neighborhood? So the city set it for demolition. A woman named Julia Yadon heard about it, got a group of people together to raise money and save the home, so she stepped in and did that in 1970. And then it opened as a museum in 1977 after a complete renovation.
So does anybody own this home? Like, does people stay in this home?
They do not. It's strictly a house museum.
Okay.
We're owned by the Fort Smith Heritage Foundation. So we're not any sort of government run at all. We're a small
Okay.
nonprofit. Any other questions?
Nope.
Okay, because I was going to say that was a lot of history thrown at you very fast.
Right.
Let's roll it. We got 8 hours of driving to do, so.
Gotcha. So what we'll do now is we will start moving from room to room. We'll start here in the hallway because if you're visiting the Claytons socially, you're going to be their same upper middle class lifestyle. So with upper middle class, it means that you, sir, you would work, but you would be a lawyer, a doctor, a wealthy banker. So you're making a lot of money and you're not doing any physical labor. You're not working and you're spending your days overseeing the household servants, the cooks, the maids. You're overseeing the nurse. You don't have a lot of interaction with your kids. You're overseeing the household account. Basically, you make sure the house runs smoothly for your husband.
Okay.
And then when you're not doing that, you have social obligations that you have to meet. And so one of those obligations would be visiting your neighbors, basically, so visiting the Claytons. So when you came to visit the Claytons socially, that door, the front door, is the door that you would use. So this front hallway would really set off the decorating tone for the Claytons, and in general, let's call it tasteful clutter. So lots and lots of stuff.
Okay.
Now here, this room, this is the sitting room.
Okay.
This is the least formal room here in the Claytons' home.
Okay.
So this is where Wednesday the Claytons had a formal dinner party. After dinner, men and women separated for an acceptable amount of time. How long that time really is, I'm not entirely sure because Isabella Beaton and her contemporaries just say acceptable amount of time. But it is long enough for the men to have a drink or two and smoke a cigar. So if you're my dad, that could be 3 hours.
Yeah.
Realistically, it was probably about an hour to an hour and a half. Now, another reason that this is the least formal room, along with being basically the precursor to the man cave, it is really, I'm not exaggerating, is because here we have the carriage door. So this was the family store. You can think of this as the Clayton's version of a modern day garage door.
Okay.
So unless the weather was awful, visitors used the front door, family used this door, and servants and tradesmen and solicitors used the back door. Now, what's happened in here is a couple of times we smelled pipe smoke or cigar smoke. And remember the rule of no smoking? That even goes for events. So there's no way that you should be able to smell pipe tobacco
Okay.
here in this room. But we've smelled it a couple of times. One time it was strong enough to where I went and grabbed a fire extinguisher.
Wow.
Yes, that was an interesting day. Also in here, we were doing a Halloween dinner with a couple of other nonprofits, and they had dessert here, so we were all decorated for Halloween. We had people coming through. Someone took a photo standing in the doorway. There were a couple of people over